When Tonya ate, she would mechanically digest her food with mastication, and then the three glands, the parotid, submandibular, and sublingual, would contribute salivary amylase to start the carbohydrate breakdown, and that would turn the food into a semi-solid, and her tongue and her soft palate would turn the clump of food into a ball or a bolus, and the tongue would push that into the pharynx, and then through the epiglottis, which is a little flap at the top of the esophagus and trachea, and then through that into the esophagus here. And the esophagus has wave-like contractions called peristalsis, and that would move the bolus all the way down into the stomach. Once the food reaches, or the bolus reaches the stomach, it enters through the cardiac sphincter, which is way back in there, and then it comes into the stomach. The stomach has three parts. The top is the fundus, the middle is the body, and the end is the pylorus. Inside the stomach, it's like wavy kind of, and that's called rugae. While the food's in the stomach, it turns in from a semi-solid into a semi-liquid because the HCl, which is produced by the parietal cells, and the pepsin, which is produced by the chief cells, help break down the food. In the stomach, the pH level is 2. And then once the food gets broken down, it starts to enter the small intestine through the pyloric sphincter here. Once it enters the small intestine, it enters the first part, which is the duodenum, and that's where most of the digestion happens. And then the next part of the small intestine is the jejunum, and then the last part is the ileum. And in the small intestine, the liver produces bile to help digestion, and so there's 5 lobes of the liver. There's 2 back here, 1 big one, and then these 2 over here. And within the liver is the gallbladder back here. And then there's also the pancreas, which is behind the stomach, and that produces other digestive juices as well. And then the bolus turns into chyme, and as the chyme goes through the small intestine, it enters the large intestine at the ileocecal valve. So the large intestine has 3 parts. The first part is the cecum, and then it goes into the colon, and then it ends with the rectum. The colon is split up into 4 different parts, and that's the ascending, so it goes this way, and then the transverse, and cuts across the body, and the descending, and then it ends with the sigmoid, which enters into the rectum. The intestines are held together by mesentery, which is like tissue that just obviously holds it together, and we cut ours out. And all the organs are covered in visceral peritoneum, and then on the outside, the shiny stuff is the parietal peritoneum. Back here, the blue things are the kidneys. There's one here, and then one back here.
Do you want to do the bladder and the diaphragm?
Yeah. And then the spleen is over here. Down here is the bladder, and up here is the diaphragm. And then kind of attached to the diaphragm would be the greater omentum, and that would just kind of cover all of the intestines, kind of like a blanket. And then around like the liver and the pancreas, there's the lesser omentum.